Hi, Paige.
Hi, thanks you. Sorry, editor. Thank you so much for having me.
Um, I'm so happy that you're here. Uh, I just, I'm obsessed with true crime. You are the first true crime podcast host I've ever had on. That's super exciting for me.
Oh, what an honor. And honestly, I think it just goes to show that like it doesn't matter like what sphere you're really deeply involved in, that these kinds of topics surrounding women, they don't discriminate, whether it's from infertility to other, issues and topics within women's health. Like we it does not discriminate and we all experience it.
That's exactly right. I want to talk about the Murder Diaries, which is your podcast.
Thank you. Yeah, let's
And
talk about it.
how did it come into being?
So me and one of my best friends today met actually on Bumble BFF, which is kind of like the friend side of the dating app Bumble.
Whoa, I never even knew this existed. I'm so excited to hear this.
I didn't either, but one of my besties from college posted about doing it way back when in like 2018 or 2019. And I was like, a lot of my closest friends from growing up, which I grew up in the same town pretty much my whole life. So these are friends that I've had since kindergarten, since, junior high. So I was adjusting to the fact that now many of us are married or moving on to different states or areas in our life and just aren't able to, outside of texting and phone calls, really get together. And I was like, I really need my group that I can actually be with physically as well. And so when I saw that, I go, I'm gonna check out Bumble BFF. And so we swiped the correct way. It's so bad I can't even remember if that's right or left. I'm pretty sure, but I think it's right. We swiped right on each other and started chatting. And then we met up and just that was kind of it. We always kind of say that we bonded over like tacos and true crime a little bit. Although, of course, that's a privilege to be able to say that because we have evolved to a point now in our relationship and our business where we are interested in highlighting, the issue that is surrounding the massive amount of violence against women, and some men too, of course. But, really feeling that once we started getting immersed and telling these stories. So it was kind of interesting in terms of like, hey, this is a podcast of friends talking about true crime to really understanding like, whoa, like ethically, what we really need to highlight is cases that are unsolved, cases of missing people. And what's interesting is that there are over 280,000 unsolved cold cases. So whether or not that statistic, when I was informed of that through a reputable person who I would trust with this information that's in this area, I can't remember if that's just cold or if it also encompassed unsolved. I want to say it was cold, which means like right, like the investigation has no leads, whether or not somebody wants to keep it as an option that they never stop thinking about or whatever in law enforcement and the families. But that's a lot. And so
A
the
lot.
idea of, only doing solved or anything like that, like unless there's a family that really needs us, that's something that we actually err towards in terms of doing missing and murdered, but still unsolved, because there's a need for that. And we can see where a platform like that we have built can actually really benefit those families.
Well, that's what I was going to ask.
Yeah.
So your business partner and Bumble BFF is Natalie.
Yes.
And you guys met, you hit it off. You're like, we love true crime. Let's start this podcast. How do you go about even doing your first case? And then from there, how did you decide, let's just keep amplifying these cases that need attention and still need to get solved?
Again, that was just something that evolved when we had our first episode to what our episodes are like now. It is a bit of a different podcast and a different process. So it's somewhat hard to pinpoint now, all these 5 years later, how we picked then versus how we picked now,
Yeah.
but I do know again that it was different because of where the focus was and just our experience and the experience that it provides the families that are more in need when they're missing or unsolved.
Mm. Mm. And do you have people who reach out to you to help solve, to give tips?
They reach out in order to gain access to the platform that, in all honesty, we have built for them and to amplify their voices. If you even take a spin on TikTok, for example, once you get on this type of TikTok, you always kind of get segmented because of what you interact with. But if you are in this kind of true crime sphere of TikTok, you will see people with family members that they're still trying to get justice for a lot, making videos. Some of them don't have a lot of followers, some of them gain a lot of followers. There's just really no rhyme or reason to that, but you can see it. So it just again points to that need
Wow.
that's there. And that is definitely a way that we do interact or find these families, whether we reach out or whether they reach out. But definitely both happens for our podcast.
And what do you think it is? I mean, I constantly think about this. Why are we, especially women, so drawn to true crime?
It's hard to say because I must admit, as a podcaster, I've gone from consumer to content creator.
Mhm.
And that has changed the role, that has changed the responsibilities. I think women as consumers are drawn to it because, in a way, I feel like it makes us feel less crazy for feeling unsafe in a world that isn't always the safest for us, unfortunately. There are many times where we are absolutely safe, of course. I'm not trying to like breed fear in everybody, but we do have to think about those things when we're out on a walk, whether it's the safest suburb in that state or province, or whether it's a really dangerous area or like a bigger city where there might be more likelihood or a higher rate of crime. I think it makes us feel like, yep, see, I'm not crazy. These things do happen. How horrific. It's one of those things like you just feel like unfortunately like you can't kind of shy away from it, right? It's sort of like when you see something happening that's so horrible, but then like you look again, or that thing that smells really bad, but you like give it like a second sniff, like, yep, yep, still smells bad. And I know that sounds so weird, and I really don't want it to sound flippant, but I do think that there's a piece of that there where it reminds us, and there is certain coping mechanisms that research or intellectualization provides. And I think understanding these stories or deep diving certain stories or even just watching an episode of Paula Zahn, for example, can remind us. And it also has that thing of like, okay, am I being more informed? I understand the potentiality of things that could happen to me. If I watch these shows, if I read about these cases, I'm going to have a better understanding of the things out there that are happening. So there's
Mm,
that aspect of it too.
mm. As a kid, were you watching Unsolved Mysteries or Paula's 2020? Like I watched 2020 Dateline.
All of them.
Yeah.
I often say in interviews that I have a history of growing up with America's Most Wanted,
Mm,
Rescue 911, Unsolved Mysteries. I was fascinated by those shows even as a young person. And I think that that really hit too. So that never really left. I think I did consume that content.
mhm,
And then as soon as I got into podcasts, I consumed a few podcasts, some of which I um, can have an appreciation for, but ethically have learned a little bit better to support in that way. And then there are others that, of course, I will still listen to here and there, but it is definitely something where I have shied more away from that. And the only main reason I'm consuming those things is for the podcast. So
mhm.
it's definitely changed, but only because I have become that content creator, not because I think that women are wrong for trying to learn and support and amplify these stories by consuming or sharing, of
Mm,
course.
mm. Love it. Are there cases that stick with you? Like over time?
Yeah. And, it's not one of those things where any case would be, more important than another,
Mhm.
but there are just certain things that maybe you're relating to with a victim more on, or maybe it's one that just really kind of like blew up and amplified and sticks with a lot of people. Or maybe it's because you connected with a family member, just those natural human tendencies of connecting more in different areas. I mean, even down to school subjects, right? We like different school subjects better than other, but I can say I liked school overall, but these were my favorite subjects. Or some people can say I hated school, but this was the only class I liked, right? So that's a natural human tendency. But there are certain cases that we covered that I think do I like to say kind of just hit us in a different way. It doesn't mean that they're more important, but they do stick. In
Mhm.
terms of one that like a lot of people will know and I think sticks with a lot of us would be like Jean-Benet Ramsey. I would love to see that case solved
Yeah.
before, I leave this earth because that is one I think that sticks with a lot of us. It has so many different theories. It has so many different twists and turns now throughout the decades since it has happened that I think a lot of people would like to have that one. But again, in terms of the podcast, there are times where we really connect with certain family members and things like that when we are blessed to work with them.
Do you have a theory on the John Bonet case that you want to share?
I really don't. And here is why, if I did, I might not share it too much, is because we have to be careful with those platforms when sharing those theories because the court of public opinion is really, really strong and can be very influential. And I think that in cases, especially that are unsolved, it can it can be important to discuss certain avenues to be aware or for, law enforcement to develop those. But in terms of the court of public opinion, again, it can really influence what journalism surrounding the case looks like, whether it's a YouTube video to an article, and we can start to piece together something, and then maybe something actually really is coming up about the case that isn't that, and it can be hard for people to accept, to believe, and it can influence even down to a jury. So, I really don't truly have a theory on that. I don't know if I believe that it was somebody in her family that did it. And I think that that's something that the court of public opinion is very heavy on.
Mhm.
And I think that until it is ruled out, that we can't totally rule it out. And they have had different things of DNA and things like that kind of come up. But a lot of it is kind of kept to a certain point from the public because they have to protect things in this case
Right.
that is almost 30 years ago. I mean, it'll be
Which is
29 this
bonkers.
Christmas. It
That's
is.
crazy.
It's bonkers because we're talking about something that happened in the mid 90s. It happened in 1996. And so we're talking about when DNA was being developed, and we're talking about a case that has had a lot of coverage throughout that time. And so it's just wild that these things are still unsolved, even though we've had the technology continuing to grow and grow and grow. And you would think that that would, help and assist the case in a way that we understand as the public, but there could be things that we don't know, and there probably is.
Mm, mm, love it. I love that you brought that case up too, because I've devoured every piece of content about that case, but it's not obviously something I think about every day. And
Right.
I just love you're like, yeah, the one that stayed with me, like that one stays with all of us, you
It
know?
really, really does. And I think that's why I use it as an example because I think it's one that people can relate to. Because I could talk about one that we got to work with a family on and how we connected with them and things like that. But it's hard to, I think, understand as the consumer unless you bring up a case that, yeah, is stuck with people as the
Yeah.
consumer. And I think Lacey Peterson is another one that
Mm,
has really stuck with a lot of people. The Casey and Kaylee Anthony, those types of cases that get a lot of coverage really stand out. And I think a lot of the things that have come out in the recent documentary from the Gabby Petito case, which is
mhm.
a lot more recent because we're talking 2021 with that case,
Right.
that's another case that really, truly sticks out and will be carrying with me forever. And let's not even get into the Idaho 4. Like and these cases almost sound and I don't mean this word very flippantly either, but these cases are almost a cliche in a way in the true crime sphere to be, I will say, interested in or to have opinions and thoughts on. But that's because there's something there that really just sparked. And I think sometimes it's kind of hard to pinpoint exactly what it is outside of just the horrificness
Hmm.
and the luck of media propping it up and then it catching like wildfire into the public. And then you add what we have with TikTok and YouTube being able to continue to kind of spread the awareness of the cases or theories, be them, helpful or not. Um, so it's interesting, but it happens for a reason, but it's hard to pinpoint what that is.
Mm-mm. Do you watch documentaries on this too, or you have to put some boundaries on?
Great question. I would say a little bit of both. It can go in and out. Like I've said, I have sort of changed the way and the reasons that true crime content is being consumed because it is now a job that I feel so lucky to have in terms of amplifying these family voices and awareness of these cases and things like that. Um, but right, when you are consuming it for what is a job of content creation, there's only so much more content that you feel that you can take,
Hmm.
or that you feel like you're going to be comfortable or you're interested in consuming any
Hmm.
longer. It just happens, it does happen when you take what you love and it becomes part of your job. Again, so lucky to do it and don't feel like that was a mistake by any means. But yes, absolutely. I can't say that like, yes. So now I still watch every documentary and I still, the way I would if I wasn't already immersed in it every single day doing research or recording or working with families, interviewing families, etc., regarding other cases. It sort of has become the job and the way that I consume.
Hmm. But speaking of your everyday and your family, your
Mhm.
other job is as a teacher?
I am a counselor at two different colleges.
Like, this is what I love. And this is what I think is so amazing about women. You literally are a counselor and then are putting murder stories out there. And we want to devour both. You know what I mean?
Yes, I think there's like the need of working in a social sphere that way and working in a more of like a service oriented type role, if you will, and helping people. That's something I think that I always wanted to do. When I was younger and in my sixth grade yearbook, I wrote that like I wanted to go to law school and study psychology. Like that's what I wanted to do. Wanted to study psych and then I would go to law school. And then I think I always had a general interest working in education, but I I think I didn't realize it until I was doing an internship in college. So I was like, yeah, I think I like educational counseling. And so then I was able to go ahead and pursue that as a master's. Instead, there was a short period of time where I thought maybe not psych, let me go ahead and become a Spanish teacher.
Oh,
And
wow.
then I thought, I don't know if I want to leave high school for, 4 to 6 years and then come back and have that be my entire career for the next 30 or 40 or whatever years. And so I had really considered that. Not that I think it's bad or a horrible idea for anybody. It was just something that stuck to me of like, okay, this is an environment that I am at every day. When I leave college, do I want to go back to that? And then I'm there for 30 or 40 years instead of 13. So I really gave that some heavy consideration and had some other reasons why I did switch back to psychology from the Spanish major. I just kind of fell in love with Spanish in high school. And so that was something that kind of blew me away a little bit from what I had written in my sixth grade yearbook, right? And I'm kind of that person where when I make up my mind, that's kind of what I'm gonna do. I'm very afraid to change choices. For example, like changing career probably would not ever be something I do, although it is completely natural. And like the average person like changes like I think like 3 times in their career, or so is kind of shared around our counseling community that it's, you could change up to like 3 times, but that is not me. I'm kind of like more like set. That kind of brings discomfort to me to think about. So luckily, I was changing colleges. And so in that change of college, I was able to get back to that original psychology major.
I love that. So this actually makes me think about the other piece of your story that I want to
Mhm.
talk about, which is your family, your personal
Yes.
family, and your desire to become a parent. Did you always want to be a mom growing up?
I come from a really big family, so it was definitely something that I kind of figured would happen,
Hmm.
or would be part of my life, although I was diagnosed when I was 10 with something called Turner syndrome. I have a mosaic form, so you wouldn't really know it looking at me. Some other women with Turner's would have more external features than I do. And in having Turner syndrome, one of the most commonly shared, like almost 100% shared, symptoms is infertility. It is caused by ovarian failure, or so it was called when I was diagnosed. I do wonder if they have a prettier name for it now, but all it really
They
means
don't.
is they really don't, because why would we, right? This is a
Right.
women's health issue.
Right.
Why would we?
Right.
Um, with that, my ovaries never truly formed. Honestly, the last ultrasound that I had really was like, there's not even tissue there. Like, because sometimes there might be some tissue. And this is all caused by the fact that your X chromosome deletes spontaneously. They don't know why, but as you're forming as a bunch of cells in the uterus, you're forming, forming, forming. And then at some point, the X deletes. In mosaic, which is what I have, not every cell in my body has that deletion. In classic TS, you're going to have every single cell, if you were to look at the DNA in it, it would be missing the X or part of the X, because you can just miss part of it. So there's that idea too, is that it was a full deletion, partial deletion, and is it mosaic or not? So mine is mosaic, and I either have complete deletion or my cells actually did something really cool. It's called an isochromosome, where when it partially deleted, it reduplicated itself. So it duplicated its long arms or its short arms. I forget which part. I would have to look at the thing from the 90s. But basically, when two of the four arms of the chromosome that was going to fully deleted, my body was like, nope. And then it just duplicated the arms
Wow.
that were there. So I have every other cell has no X, and then every other cell has that, what again you called an isochromosome.
Wow. Okay. So 10 years old, what led to your diagnosis? What was going on?
I was short, and my mom is short. And my sister is short, but my other sister and my brother are not so short. You would say they're like a normal-ish height. In fact, my oldest sister has some pretty decent height. And I was a small kid, but I just really started feeling by like fourth grade, like I guess I know I was shorter, but like now I'm feeling really short. Like I was 4'1", and I
Mm.
just am not growing the same rate. And unbeknownst to me, because I was a child, my first grade teacher had already been on top of some of this, sharing certain things she noticed, just in physical activity with me, and just shared. I don't know what I'm looking at, but I look at a lot of first graders and I'm noticing this when she this.
Hmm.
And my mom didn't necessarily know what it meant either, and I was happy, I was healthy. There was nothing totally wrong. I was physically capable of everything. It was just she noticed an interesting way. I guess I don't know, I guess I don't have to keep it that private. I don't know why I was. I was running a little bit funky. She noticed
Okay.
I was running. My first grade teacher was like, I don't know what I'm looking at, but the way she runs is a little different.
Mm.
But again, it wasn't stopping me from running in PE or in recess. Like it wasn't stopping me. She just noticed. And a lot of times when you notice those things, it can be syndromic. And she wasn't probably very wrong. So my mom did take me to the doctor at that time. And of course, having Mosaic and having it be the 90s, they didn't really know exactly what they were totally looking at either. I mean, Turner syndrome has been around for a while, but it's not that common. And it's not something that without all of those external features, especially in the 90s, that they really would have been able to pinpoint right away. But so then I'm 10 and I'm noticing I'm short and sorry, let me restart. Let me see. So then I don't know where I left off, but I had to take a quick pause there.
That's
So now
okay.
I'm 10 and I come to my mom saying, "Hey, I'm kind of short and I'm wondering like is there something I can take that like might help me grow more?" No idea at 10 that this could be syndromically related.
Sure.
And having already taken me to the doctor for something, she is probably now a couple years later going, "Yeah, this is probably a good idea to check in on what is going on." I'm sure as parents they were noticing things too of like she's really just not catching up with these kids. Being short is one thing, but it was just time to check back in of is this a normal short stature? What's going on? So we did, and that doctor seemed to recognize what they were looking at pretty much right away.
Mm.
And incidentally, around 10 is a similar age to when my other siblings were kind of switching away from a pediatrician. I'm the youngest, so I think she probably thought, okay, and this is a great time to kind of, start getting her in with our doctor. And maybe I already had, but just like, more formally looking at some things with this doctor. So they sent me over to a children's hospital for further diagnostics. And that's what they came up with. And by then they were able to tell with like a few different tests, but I'm sure also genetic tests as well, which were done. And on top of, let's see, I mean, there was scans of different organs in the body, the heart, kidneys, some blood work, nothing crazy invasive, but especially when you're 10, and you're getting an echocardiogram, you're going, okay, like what's going on?
Mm.
But so yeah, there was plenty of hallmarks for whatever they needed for diagnostics. Again, very difficult for me to remember because I just remember going. And they were able to diagnose me and get me on growth hormone, which is typically, I don't want to say necessary, but lack of a better word, necessary if you want to grow on Turner syndrome and sort of treat that symptom, which was great. So I was on that for about 5 years as a child and early teen.
Wow. And did they tell you at that point that you would ultimately probably have a fertility issue?
Yes, they told my parents.
And
I don't think
how did they handle it? And then when did they tell you?
I sort of wish I knew how they handled it. I don't think I was very much part of that conversation, rightfully so, because I think that being under 12 years old, the confidentiality is a little bit different at that point.
Sure.
And also, obviously, they're with me. And I think that while I did know that that was an option, they never shied away from that for me. I think I always knew it was an option. And then I remember as I was getting off the shots, and entering into different medications that involve women's health and hormone management and things like that. Remember, ovaries are not formed. So you do have to take those types of medications and supplements. And to be honest, this is why it's kind of scary where we're living in a world where some of those medications are looked at, not to get over political. This is just strictly like regarding that medication and my feelings with that and how I know that it's very important for my health to avoid things such as uterine cancer, to have hormonally based things such as birth control, or other hormone replacement therapies available. It's very important for my condition to have. So it kind of does make me sad, but luckily right now it's available to me and it's here and I can take it. And so that is what I was starting at that age around 15. And that is when I asked, hey, so since I need these, does that mean that symptom we've talked about for the last 5 years off and on or was mentioned, is that something that does affect me, right? Because I'd never heard otherwise that I could. And they were
Hmm.
like, yes. Yes, it does. But to be honest, and I have very good parents, but you got to love that boomer style of they kind of just had let me come to them with it.
Hmm.
And that was that. I mean, and there really isn't anything I could do.
Hmm.
And I do think that I am lucky to know at a young age if there was something that was going to affect my
Yeah.
fertility. I feel very lucky that I was able to know that. And I did grow up being very open about it. I mean, if I went to like probably middle school or high school with you, you probably actually knew that. Like
Mm.
at least within a grade or two above and a grade or two below me. And if I knew you, like you knew that. Like I was
Good for
always an
you.
open book. Yeah, I just feel like it kind of helped normalize it too. Like, and I do wonder of the many people that have grown up to actually have their own issues after attempting to start their families as well, be it primary or secondary fertility issues. I do wonder if that helped normalize it, or if they are kind of thinking about like, wow, and Paige had that issue too. And like, hopefully it doesn't make them feel super duper alone outside of their partner. Hopefully it's a good reminder for them that it can happen to so many people.
Okay, so but you did, so you met your husband, and did
In high
you
school.
in high school? So he knew right away.
Yeah, I mean, it's not even a conversation I think we ever even really truly had to have in terms of like, hey, just a reminder. Obviously, in terms of getting married and talking about family planning, we have to revisit it. But it was kind of nice having gone to high school with him, especially since we didn't date in high school, that it was something he already knew. Like that was
And
kind of nice.
he was good with it. He was like, "We'll see what happens." But you knew you could try IVF.
I knew I could try IVF. Obviously needed to speak to doctors whether or not that was going to be me or surrogate. It had been suggested for a long period of time that it would likely be with a surrogate, even
And
though I
this
do
is
have a uterus.
because, okay, that's what I was going to ask. So
Mhm.
no ovaries formed, but eggs form. And where were they going?
So there, no eggs, no nothing. Like I don't have
Nothing.
nary a tissue there.
So surrogate would have been a donor egg, donor
Yeah.
body, and
Yep.
okay. And you
Yes.
tried it, and you tried it.
We did. I had two amazing people, and this comes from being an open book, that reached out to me from knowing growing up with me, and they knew it. And by the time we were nearing 30, it had been on both of their hearts and minds, apparently, unbeknownst to me, because these are not women I was super close with, but had, a strong enough acquaintanceship with, of course. Again, growing up with them is how I would term it. These were not people in my inner circle, but had absolutely shared time and friends with throughout the years. And they both came at separate moments, did not speak to each other or have any conversations about anything or anything like that. And they both came to me at separate times, just letting me know, like, it's something I think about. And if I can ever help, here's how I would want to help. The surrogate saying I would want to be a surrogate, the next one saying I would want to, I'm happy to donate eggs. Like I don't ever want to be pregnant, and especially if it's my egg. And I was like, listen, I wouldn't want that for you either. And like, thank you, because we do have somebody that stepped forward, like if surrogacy was ever an option, that they wanted to step up and do that. And so yeah,
Wow.
that's what we did a few years ago. And it's just something that didn't work out the first time. And it takes so much longer than you would think, right? Because after we
Yes.
had them, then it was okay, it's go time for the funds. And so I'm
Mm-hmm.
figuring this out. And I spoke with one of my sister's best friends that has two boys from IVF and is also a breast cancer survivor. Yay.
Mm-hmm.
And she came forward to me with, well, I can't say she came forward. Let me start over. I went to her. Yeah, let's start it with that if you don't mind, who's ever editing. I went to her and asked, listen, like, how do you do this? Because it's so expensive and I don't want to be extremely aged, no matter how beautifully aged, when we can actually do this. I would rather do it sooner than later, but this whole money thing makes that really confusing, and I don't really feel safe trying to figure it out. And she just looked at me and was like, get a loan and figure it out. Just get a
Mm,
loan. There's loans, there's fertility loans, there's all kinds of different types of loans you could do. And I say that with extreme caution because taking a loan is a very big undertaking. It's great in the very beginning because you have the money that you need to get done what you want to get done, but it's also something you have to pay back. And
yeah,
it's
of
also
course.
something that you might not know how you're going to be paying it back at that time, or you're strapped with a payment that helps you pay it back. Either way, yeah, eventually, get it paid off, but you really want to look financially budget wise, what that payment would be. And there's origination costs that you're not going to get back that you're paying on top of what you need. So it's just a really, it's something you really have to think about. So, of course, I didn't just run and get a loan, but I kind of looked at my husband and I go, I think if we are going to do it, eventually it might involve a loan, no matter how much we can save, but this is going to involve a loan. Because
Hmm.
again, when you're talking surrogate and you're talking egg donation, it already costs more to do the IVF,
Right.
even if you aren't paying them, which both of those amazing women did not ask for money, although I have given them both money
Mm,
out of my own volition. But
hmm.
that was not something that either of them were coming forward to to do that for. In which
Amazing.
I think that would still be okay. Like, hey, listen, like I want to do it. And I think just cost wise, I would just need this much.
Mm,
Like it's not like, because I mean, if you're talking surrogacy agency, you're talking like, I'm not a super expert on it, but I mean, I think you're talking 100,000 or above just for a surrogate.
correct.
And rightfully so. I mean,
Hmm.
this is illegal in other countries. Like if I
Right.
was German, I couldn't do this. This is egg donation and surrogacy, not a thing that you can do in Germany. I don't know
Right.
if you can do surrogacy on your own with your own egg, but like you definitely can't do it with egg donation. This was explained to me by one of my best friends who was born and raised in Germany.
Hmm.
So she's aware, her parents are still there. She was so interested in the process because she and her mom had some great questions because she's like, this is illegal. So like that's why we have like questions like you can't do this in Germany. So it's really cool, what you're doing. But all that to say is, I get why it's $100,000. This is someone's body, health. This is their family.
Right.
If they have children, it affects their children, it affects their partner, it affects everything. And I mean, pregnancy is like the closest you can get to like and childbirth, like to dying. Like it's way more fragile than I think we actually understand or grasp what a amazing, incredible process it is for those who have been through it. You have done something truly amazing. Even if you've only had success doing it once, it's incredible that even one time everything got put together and that you
Yes.
survived. It's incredible. And so it is a big deal, which is why I gave them both money.
Hmm.
But it was just incredible. And so again, it already costs more money though, even without that, because of the way we were doing it, which I found a little bit interesting at the end of the day as well. But just because it wasn't my egg that was extracted and it wasn't going back in me, the facility, for whatever reasons, did charge more than if it was me and my egg.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, very
Yeah.
interesting. I think I don't know what it is, but
Yeah. There's different levels of like culpability. There's different risk factors, all the things. I mean,
right.
you know how insane this whole process is.
Mhm.
So that round, it didn't work out for
Yeah,
you. And
correct.
how did you handle it at the time?
Honestly, a little worse than I thought. And it was interesting because there was a lot of thoughts going through my mind. And like, I'm hoping that this is hitting anybody who maybe isn't having success, that maybe wants to jump off the roller coaster, but society is making them feel like they can't. Or maybe somebody who is having secondary infertility and is feeling like they want to go ahead and be happy with the one, but they're feeling guilt about not giving a sibling to this child. I mean, these are real things that some consider. And I feel like there's this thing of of hope that's instilled by maybe even having one that maybe you didn't have any issues with, or you had issues and you overcame them. There's that hope of like, I can do this again, we'll overcome again. Or there's this idea of, yeah, I had hope because this process is successful for so many, but I'm just not feeling that success or drive that this is working or working for me and my mental health at this time. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. And so I hope that this hits some of those people going through those things. That idea of there's this glimmer of hope or reason to have hope, and then it's not meeting that expectation.
Well, and you said something really important that we do touch upon here, which is
Mhm.
the aspect of mental health. I think some people
Mhm.
think because the physical health is more visible and tangible, they
Mhm.
have to keep going because the mental health load becomes invisible.
Yes.
But choosing your mental health is also very tangible and is basically what you did. And there's so much power in that. And I think
Yeah.
I really admire you did it once and you were like, we're not going to keep doing this
Yeah.
because people sometimes just torture themselves and torture themselves and
Mhm.
torture themselves. And you didn't. And
Yeah.
that's really admirable.
Thank you. And it's not, or I wish I knew how common that was. I do feel like it's more common to stay on the roller coaster. And there's something admirable about that if that's what you're shooting for, but it's about knowing that you have the choice, right? So when you ask, how did you react? How did you feel? I'm kind of paraphrasing the question from a few moments ago. And I said, not as well as I thought, because yeah, I thought I was so equipped to be able to handle this. And I would have never thought like one and done. But I felt the trauma. And trauma is how we react, right? Trauma isn't always necessarily what's happening to you because there are several things, and I can leave them unnamed, that can happen to you as an adult that are in a way that is not traumatic. And there's ways that these things can happen to you as a child that would be traumatic, or there's also ways that it's also traumatic as an adult because of the way certain things may happen to you, right? And so, or you can even take it as let's say certain deaths in a family, right? The way a grandparent passing, which is a very normal thing to go through in life, that may traumatize somebody who was raised by that grandparent versus somebody who is going to be sad and grieve but not live within trauma due to a death of a grandparent. I guess that's a really great example. So trauma is the way you react, and you react in the way that it hits you. So to me, that's how I see trauma. And I could just feel that like this is coming off as trauma, and I don't like that.
So
So
great. I really admire that.
I think my husband sort of felt the same way of like, listen, I would love a kid. That's why we're doing this. But like, also, like, your health and your mental health are more important to me. That's why he did not even want me to implant at all, like
Mm.
into me, because that was an
Hmm.
option and a
Hmm.
cheaper option, and an option if anything were to happen with the surrogacy where they felt uncomfortable, or they were no longer wanting to do that any longer, or maybe they only agreed to try one implantation. All of this is done under like really strict contract, which by the way also costs money. And so, you're spending a couple thousand on all of that. And, you agree to one and then speaking about another one. So she was open to an additional one, but the contract really only covered one.
Hmm.
And so that was another thing to discuss of like, look, if one doesn't work out, do we want to try with me or whatever? And he was like an instant, no, I feel like your body wasn't made to do it, and that's okay. And that's like, oh, I don't want this to sound bad, but like having a child would be amazing if that's what we're supposed to be. But I don't want it bad enough to put you into a high risk situation.
I think that's so beautiful to say it like that. I know what you're like, you have to be
Yeah.
careful because you're like, you don't want you to die at the expense of having a kid. I get that, but I think that's a really important perspective, and a lot of people don't choose that.
It was a very real possibility,
Mm.
actually. More so than just, oh, hey, um, my body wasn't made to do this and I don't have ovaries, and that's a concern. That's a concern enough. It makes sense. But women with Turner syndrome, when pregnant, they don't know why, but some of them suffer from aortic dissection, which is like what John Ritter died of on the set of Eight Simple Rules. And it does happen to women with Turner syndrome during pregnancy, and they don't know why. From the studies I've read, it wasn't very clear if they were becoming pregnant on their own, but I mean, I would find that very unlikely.
Very rare, yeah.
Yeah, because it is so rare that they even have tissue that has eggs in it, although it is a thing. But so, yeah, I mean, and then obviously, there is that thing of adoption was an option. And I think a lot of people ask why it's not. And that's like a whole nother story and a whole nother podcast episode as to adoption and when it's appropriate and when it's not. And I think we live in a world where we think that it solves problems. But just like any medication, it creates new problems while solving a different problem. And so that is something that I didn't take lightly, and that is not something that we were going right towards. And of
Mm.
course, also costs money. So if we were going to spend money, that's kind of where we kind of went down that side of things to spend the money.
And then I just love that you guys chose you. You chose you and chose each other. And I think it's really incredible.
Thank you. It's not always easy because society kind of makes you feel like it might not be something that you're supposed to do or that it's weird. And I think a lot of people do question, like, why only once? Like to say it didn't work and you only did that once, or to say it's like because you don't understand like everything that went into it.
Right.
Outside of it feeling like trauma, you just don't understand getting it done. Is just it just wasn't something we wanted to take on anymore. Outside of all of everything else, it's like we just wanted to move on
I
and
love
form.
this.
We wanted to form our lives the way it's going to be without children, and that's just it. We just wanted to do that. My mom has a lot of siblings, and some of them have chosen not to have children. Some of them have just not had children, and then some of them have quite a few children. So
Mhm.
kind of runs the gamut in my mom's family. And so luckily with one of her siblings, I do talk to them about, what is it like, now in this phase, not having children. So I think that I kind of like have like a role model there. And I think also in being a millennial, there are a lot more millennials that are choosing just not to have children. I do have a few friends that don't have children. I have a few friends that also waited till, you know, just more recently to have children.
Mhm.
So they did, we were able to enjoy a little bit of childless married couples fun with them, dinners and, trips or whatever, which was nice. And now they're going to enjoy parenthood with,
Mhm.
infants, which is great. So I'm seeing, it's just kind of a different world. And we were kind of be able to let me start over. We were able to bond with them in those ways. And them having children, it changes things in certain dynamics, but it certainly doesn't change the relationship we were able to bond with them over. So I guess I'm just like not that concerned at this time. I mean, it's going to come with pros and cons, but like, can I say like so does having children? Like,
1,000% yes. A
it
thousand
absolutely
percent.
does. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's like of course you're taking on different challenges and we will. And those challenges, whether it's with having children or without having children, they are absolutely going to affect mental health in different ways. And that goes down to just taking care of ourselves, no matter what roles we currently have in our lives. There are parents who became parents when they were young. There are parents who became parents when they were 41. And all of those are okay and valid and are going to come with their own challenges. So if you just view it like that, I think that's something that made me a lot more comfortable being outside of what society deems as normal, which is you know, being like, yeah, we endure infertility and we're actually going to just go ahead and ride that out and not go down any treatments any longer. I think that, again, that remembering that no matter what you do has challenges is going to make it a lot easier to go against the grain with society when you're somebody like me who doesn't like to do that. I am a rule follower. And if this is what you're supposed to do around this age, I want to be doing it.
Mm.
Like I view those types of things as like living life in the right way, or I did. And now I have a better appreciation and understanding of it's not even going against the grain. You're just kind of doing what's put in front of you. instead of like fighting an uphill battle. So again, not demonizing anybody that goes through treatments. I think you owe it to yourself if that's something you want to check it out, and that's something you can afford and that you're comfortable with, but just remembering and checking in on the reasons why we're continuing to do it. Or if you need to take a pause, take a pause. Don't let time or society tell you that you have to do anything, and don't let this conversation make you feel like, oh, I need to get off the roller coaster because she did and she's totally feeling great. This is just my story, my experience, and I think that that might work for people, and I hope it reminds them of that, and I hope it reminds the people that are on the roller coaster but are feeling like it's right and that they're getting closer to this every day and are feeling like they keep getting one step closer even through the trials and tribulations they're experiencing. Then great. It's all about self-reflection.
I love that. I think it's a perfect place to wrap up, Paige. Thank you
Yeah.
so much for sharing so openly and honestly. Obviously, we'll tell everybody to go listen to the Murder Diaries and we'll link out to all of your stuff.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me. And thanks everybody for listening to my story.